Hey, what's up guys? I'm Gordon Briley, and today what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to assemble your new rack, your pulley system. They all basically assemble the same way. It's really simple, and that's kind of the beauty of it, is we wanted something that was not only ultra dynamic but easy to set up. And today what I'm going to show, there's several different ways that you could mount this to the wall. One being using 1x. So you would do 1x all the way across, as long as it extends past 4 feet. And then you would do it top and bottom. But a much more effective way, and you're gonna see that with our products, you can add a lot of different pieces in different area, whether it be a weight plate holder to the wall. So having a solid surface that you can attach to me makes a lot more sense. It's going to cost a little bit more, but in the grand scheme of things, it's well worth it. So what I bought was a 3/4 piece of plywood. You're going to want something that's very secure and that you can bolt to the wall. And technically, I should probably say that you should contact a contractor or a professional as far as how many bolts you use, that kind of stuff. But that's just obvious liability stuff. But what I say is screw the shit out of it. Bolts, lots of screws. It doesn't hurt to be a little bit safer than kind of taking it easy on that stuff. So bolt it, screw it, as many places as you can. And make sure this part's really secure, because your rack is actually going to fasten directly to this. So again, 3/4 4x8 sheet, and I am actually going to paint this just how it is. Paint it first, that way when I put it up, it'll just be touch up where the bolts are. So we're going to move on to the next step. So first thing I wanted to go over how to actually attach it just using 1x. I like 1x8 or 1x10. Again, it's more surface area to attach more bolts. So I'm just going to demonstrate how I did it on this rack system. So if you want it to be a little more affordable, maybe give it a little design element, which I did here. This is one way to do it and save some money, and it still should work just fine. So again, 1x8, 1x10, I can't remember exactly what this was, but you get the point. So I bolt it into a stud, into studs, and I think this may be the last stud here, or actually it bolts into a stud here. And then you have your actual lag screws that go into this. So now you have a solid mounting surface, because this may start on a stud, but it's not necessarily going to end on a stud. Otherwise, it would be nice and simple to attach this, but the width of a rack doesn't match up with the 48 inches that studs would be placed at. So that's why you need a solid surface to attach to. And I put some runners going down because I knew that I was going to do weight plate holders. And again, it just frames it in. So lots of bolts into the studs. Anywhere that you can. I would prefer, or I would suggest 2 to 3. You're going to have to drill a pilot hole, or you will likely split this. And you will probably want to use at least 3-inch lag bolts that are going to go through the 1-inch, the 1x, and then into the stud at least 2 to 3 inches. So those are something that you're going to actually have to get yourself. That's one thing we don't give you guys because of liability reasons. So I do a piece on the top, a piece on the bottom to attach to. Same thing on the bottom, screwed into the studs wherever possible, 2 to 3 bolts. And then you can attach your bottom rails and your top rails where they're supposed to be, and I will be giving you guys all the information and measurements on that. But this is just a general idea of how to attach it. It's nice and affordable. I painted all my stuff ahead of time, and again, you have to drill those pilot holes. So We're going to move on to the next. So now after my paint has dried on my 3/4 inch plywood, I'm going to start to fasten this to the wall with these 3-inch star bit lag screws. These ones I really like. They don't have the hex screw part that actually sticks out, so they'll sit flat. I actually decided to put this on a wall that's going to be more difficult than if you just had a stud wall. I purposely picked a spot that had something that was in the way, just to show, because this is going to be in a lot of people's home gyms and garages, and you have an obstacle, you just have to adapt and overcome. So I purposely put this somewhere that's a little more challenging, just to show that this pretty much can go anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and secure this to the wall just like you'll have to. If you have a stud wall, every 16 inches will be the studs. Unless you're in a garage, it may be 2 feet. But you're going to want to put lots of different screws into this, whether they be these star bit lag screws or an actual lag bolt or a combination of them. But you want to make sure it's really secured very well. And this is a pole barn style building, and it has purloins which actually go this way rather than going this way. So I'm going to attach at each point, it should be on 2-foot centers. Each spot that there's a purloin going here, I'm going to put several of these bolts in it, and then this will be secured to the wall. If you have stud walls, then you're just going to go vertical this way, securing it. Again, you'll have to get recommendations by a professional on how you should attach this, again, for liability reasons. So I'm going to go ahead and start attaching this, and we'll move on to the next step after that. So now that we have this secured to the wall, I use, again, a combination of lag screws, and then I use some standard deck screws in between to make sure that this was really secured to the wall. But now, for me personally, I'm a little OCD. I want my things to look well, look good, and function well. So I'm actually going to paint over the screws so they blend in. That's up to you. Alright, so now that we have the plywood up and attached to the wall, we're actually going to start building the rack, and we're going to go over this in detail. So we're going to start with the first rail and show you how we're going to begin the process and teach you about some of the basics about assembling these racks. So the first thing we're going to do is find the rail. It's going to be slotted, plain, no holes. We have several different rail types, 3-hole and 4-hole. But this one is just the plain one. This is going to be how far away from the wall that your rack actually sits. So it's either going to be 9 inches or 30 inches or 43 inches away from the wall, plus the upright. So first thing is to find this piece, and we're going to start to build from the ground up. So let's go over what tools you'll need to assemble the rack. So you can use several different things. I have a 3/4 wrench. One has a ratcheting. This makes it really easy. So having 2 of these. An actual impact drill. This makes it very simple, very fast, but I find when you use this, you tend to scar up the bolts and the washers and things like that. So it makes it really, really fast, but again, depending on your thoughts on how you want it to look, you can use this or decide not to. Same thing, 9/16, I have 2 of them, or crescent wrench. So for this main part, getting the rack going, these are the tools that you're basically going to need. And for now, that's all we got to concentrate on. And then we're going to start assembling the first pieces. So now that we have the tools out of the way, now we're going to go to some of the hardware. So we're going to go through different fittings and then different nuts. So this one here is a 1/2 inch by 1 inch. This is one of the fittings that you'll be using. We also have a 4-hole fitting that we'll go over. That actually assembles at the top, but we're working on the bottom right now. We're gonna start getting ready to attach the bottom rail to the actual plywood. And the whole system is kind of based on really simple fittings and bolts. You're gonna use those throughout the entire rack. And once you get going with this and see how easy it is, you'll get the hang of it and you guys will fly through this. So again, these nuts, there's either 3/8 that you may use for different pieces or 1/2 inch. So this is going to be for the 1/2 inch bolts, the blue is, and it's really simple. So this rail, the bottom rail that we've discovered earlier, you just take it, put it in here, twist it, and now it's ready to go. So now we have the fitting. The bottom rails are going to get the 2-hole fittings. And you'll see that one side says made in the USA. This side is always going to go down. So this side is a little bit longer, this side is a little bit shorter. The made in the USA, and we'll just keep going over this. We'll be a little bit repetitive, but it's in the end it'll just make it easier for you. So this is going to be the part that attaches to the wall. And if you see my hardware, it's a little beat up. This is some of my demo racks, and I've taken this apart again and again and again. So you guys will be brand new. So we're going to take this 1/2 inch bolt by 1 inch and a washer. They're the bigger washers. There's 3/8 washers and these bigger ones. So washer first, and now it's just going to screw into that nut, and it's actually just going to assemble these fittings to the rail system. And that's the beauty of it. It's so very simple. And this is going to attach to the wall like so. This is the bottom rail again. Now we just take our 3/4 wrench. Again, I like using the ratcheting hand wrench. Actually put it here, try to give you guys a better look at it. Find out which way the wrench ratchets, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And naturally, these will want to kind of spin on you a bit. You just got to hold them. Sometimes I'll actually turn them a little bit to the opposite direction. Tighten them down. And eventually, you're just going to pull it right back to center. And that's going to attach right to the wall. Your lag bolt is now going to go through here and fasten that, and then there's going to be other hardware that is on this bottom rail, but we're going to go by it piece by piece. So this is the first step, is actually attaching this fitting with the 1 inch by 1/2 inch hardware. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We just did the one rail, and now we're just moving over, and we're attaching in the same way, 1/2 inch nut with the bolt, smaller fitting, and then made in the USA is facing down. So now that we have both fittings, 90-degree fittings with 2 holes, actually assembled to the rail, now we're actually going to determine how far apart they need to be. And this is really simple. So the cross rail, this is actually the top piece. It has the end cap on it. It's going to be probably the only piece that has that end cap. Now determined by the width. So some racks, let's say the pulley rack, the 30-inch wide version. So that is going to have a slightly smaller rail. But this is a full-size rack. So this has the 43.25-inch rail. So you're going to find whatever piece is going to be used for the top piece that has the end caps. And this is what we're going to use to actually determine our width at which to screw these and fasten them to the wall. So now that we have this set here, so now we can simply just make a mark on the wall, center. So if you have 1x, that's where you're actually going to drill your pilot hole. One little trick or tip that I would do is give this a little bit of slack. Don't put it right tight up to it, just leave a little 1/8 inch of slack. Go right in the center, put a dot, and that's where you're going to drill your pilot hole. Or for these, using these 3/8 bolts, 3/8 washer, and with this, I'm actually going to attach it with my impact gun with a 9/16 bit. And for plywood, most of the time, it's probably not going to split. So I actually don't even use a drill bit for pilot holes. So I'm just actually going to attach this right to the wall. Get that piece nice and tight. And then we'll move over to the other side. Make sure that I have a little bit of a gap just off the side of this plastic here. And then I'm going to actually attach this one to the wall. Need to get these ones real tight. So now we have our distance apart. This was really simple. Now if you have actual studs going up and down, you may want to set one of these edges into one of the studs, especially if you have 1x or plywood. You want to make sure that if you can, start one of these rails into a stud. The other one may not land exactly on a stud, but that's okay if you have a solid surface to actually fasten to. Okay, so on to the next step. So what we're going to do is get ready to get this 90-degree 4-hole onto the wall in the right place. So your stringers or the rail system that's going to come across here that attaches to the upright, we need to have this in the right place. We want to have a nice level or plumb rack. So what we're going to do is actually use the upright to find the proper location to mount this 90-degree fitting. Again, made in the USA. We're going to go down with that. This part is going to be up. Well, how we're going to do this is to take our upright, and it's against the rail that we just installed. You could go inside or outside. I'm going to the inside. You want to make sure that it is plumb. You're going to count down 1, 2 holes, and then make a mark dead center in those holes. And that's where you're going to mount this next fitting. What you're going to have to do is transfer it over to match up with this rail down here, and that's going to be simple. All we're going to do is measure the distance from the edge of the plywood to the actual lag bolt that we put here. And if we mount that fitting, made in the USA, down, if we mount this in the same place, same distance away, it should be right where we need it. So that's going to be nice and simple to get this next piece going, and this is going to be assembled in no time. So go ahead, install your lag bolt. I, for now, just put one in and get this going. If you can be able to move it around, pivot it, that's great. It'll probably help you in the end, but we're going to make sure that we have all of our lag bolts securing this to the wall. So on my rack, from the edge to the lag bolt was 1 3/4, 1 3/4. So I'm going to just take this 1 inch, 3/4. And just like that, I was actually really, really close. Just got lucky. But now I'm actually going to take that fitting, dead center, into 3/4 by also the mark that I made. And we're going to install that fitting right there. So what I'm going to do is take another one of the lags that's provided. Now these aren't for securing the plywood to the wall, these are for securing the rack to the plywood. So taking this 3/8 with the washer on it, I'm actually going to run it into the plywood first to have my hole already there. Now that I have my hole, made in the USA down, I'm going to go top hole into the fitting, and I'm just going to now this is going to be at the right height. The rail is going to go across and attach to the upright. We're going to move on to that step after we actually put the other fitting on the other side, just repeating the process. Next step is we're actually going to install the next rail that is going to match the one down low, and it's actually going to connect to the upright. Again, we're doing the same thing. By now you should be getting the hang of how these all work. Again, 1/2-inch nuts flush to the end. That way when you put it up there, it's going to be right in the right spot. That one, the next one butts to it. There's 2 here. This is to make sure it's ultra secure at the top. This piece is whatever the length away, so the low pro, the mid-size, or the longer rack, the mega rack, just going to determine what piece you're actually grabbing. And you can purchase this instead of being the slotted with no holes. You can actually purchase the holes, and you can hang a lot of different stuff from these. It's a little more expensive, but it is pretty cool to have. But it's up to you. This is one way to do it, the most affordable way. But you can always kind of pimp out your rack system. So we're going to actually start to install this. Pretty simple. Rail goes up, nuts go on, bolt goes in, tighten it up. For these, I just hand tighten. Again, these should be lined right up. Sometimes you have to just kind of move them a little bit. Get those threads in the right place. Hand tighten. You can see the rail is actually just hanging there. No problem at all. And that piece is on. We're moving right through this assembly, and it doesn't get much easier than this. So this piece is ready. We're just going to go over, do the exact same thing on this one. Grab the rail, put the nuts in, have those ready, have them in your hands. Washer, nut, washer. And get ready to move on to the next one. See? All right, now it's time to put on the fitting. Again, it will be a 4-hole 90-degree fitting. Same thing, 1/2-inch nuts. All we're gonna do is put it in, or these, you can just slide them in since that end is exposed. Put it in sideways, slide them right in there, flush it to the end. Grab washer and bolt. By now it should be getting pretty repetitive because it's the same process. That's the awesome part. Made in the USA is going to go down. It is facing this end towards the outside. Same process. Make sure it's flush to the end. Bolt washer, same bolts. 1 inch and a 1/2-inch washer. It's so easy. fitting. Slide it in, flush it up right to the end of the tab of the nut. Bolts in, flush it up right to the end. The back side of this is flush to the end of this. Just hand tighten for now. If you wanted, you could go back and tighten these up some. They grip really well, so usually not a problem whatsoever. So right now I can move it around, it's not secured, but we'll go back and do that. Okay, now the fittings are on here. I'm just going to go ahead and snug these up some. I don't like to tighten everything down to the very end. Just want to make sure that these can't ever come out. Give them a little snug. And then we're going to move on to the next part. Okay, so the next step, we actually need to take 2-hole 90-degree fitting, and we're going to have to secure it to the second hole down. This is the top side of the upright. Second hole down, this is going to go on here. Right now it doesn't matter, there's no other fittings on the upright, so you can pick any side, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters right now is the longer piece. It says made in the USA, goes down the rail. So from the top, made in the USA, heads down this way, shorter piece is this way. Now we have, again, same bolt, 1-inch bolt, 1/2 inch, and a 1/2 inch washer, but now we have a 1/2 inch lock nut. So this part can be slightly challenging, and this is kind of maybe the hardest part, which is still not very hard. Depending on how long your fingers are, for me it's very simple. I just take on the middle finger, put it against the bottom side, slide it, and then bolt with the washer on it, and then tighten it down. And then this end will go on the inside. It's on an angle, and then we tighten this down. It's super simple. But if you don't have long enough fingers, sounds weird to say, but what I do is I'll just take tape. This is just painter's tape or some kind of tape, and actually just leave it like so. And then you just set the nut right in there, slide it in, look at it, get it right lined up, and then just screw this part in, and then grab your other wrench, whatever you're using. If you're using your gun, same difference, you get the point. So tighten this down, one on each upright. So now that we have the two fittings on our uprights to attach the rails together, what we're going to do is now stand it up and connect it to the fitting and rail that we installed earlier. So with this, we have 3/8 bolts that are 2 3/4 long. I have 3/8 washers. They're the smaller of the two washers already on it. And then I'm going to stand up the upright, and then I want this facing in towards the other upright. So second hole down will be the first bolt. Will be bolt, washer, another washer, and then the nut. And I don't think I showed this to you. This will be the 3/8 lock washer, or lock nut. And that's going to go on the back side on this fitting. And then just going to get it hand tight for now. Second bolt, third hole, and bolt, washer, washer again on the other side, and then lock nut. Just like that, this upright is in the position that it needs to be. This fitting is facing in, just hand tightened, and we're just going to do the same thing on the opposite side. At the top, and this again is if you have just the short rack with a rail, basic rail, or if you upgraded to the 3-hole rail system, that's fine. But if, we're just repeating on this side, if you have the pull-up bar, then that would be easy to install. You wouldn't need these fittings, like I said before. Bolt through into the pull-up bar that goes across here, same width as the rail system. And now I just have to finish attaching this so it's secured. It's not going to fall over, hit you in the head. There. Now our uprights are installed on the top fittings. We're going to move to the bottom fittings next, and then we're going to install the rail piece here. Okay, now we're to the bottom side. And if you assembled the fittings right, again, it's going to be the same thing. Everything should line up perfectly. So we're going to go bolt, same bolt as the top. Second hole up, through, washer, and then we'll run the bolt on. With this 3/8, it's not going to run into the top of the 1/2 inch. One of the cool parts about this is with the 1/2 inch and 3-inch bolt, this is a 9/16 hole. We have room to make slight adjustments. When you start adding in different rails, there's a platform, a lot of different things you can attach to this. This gives you the ability to make slight adjustments. You loosen it up, and if you need a little more room, you can slide it over, tighten it down, and it'll stay secured right where it's at. So now, when you go to snug this up, you're going to want to make sure it's all the way down. And then you're going to center it within, the fitting is slightly smaller than this upright. So you want to center it right within there. We're going to snug both sides up. Again, I like the ratcheting socket. Open end here. And just quickly snug this up. I'm pressing down, making sure it's centered. You can get it pretty tight and then slide it over once you get going. So I like it nice and centered. And then all we're going to do is go to the other side, rinse, wash, repeat, piece of cake. And then we're almost there. Okay, so now we're ready to secure the top rail, which is going to go right here. This is the rail that has the end caps that you used in the beginning to measure the distance between the bottom rails. This is the one that has the end caps. This is going to go here. But what you're going to want to do is we need one of the 1/2 inch rail nuts. Slid it in there. Now it's flush to the end. We'll have to go to the other side. Same thing. Now you're going to need, again, large washer, 1/2 inch, 1-inch bolt, same as you've used throughout, besides the 3/8. One for each side. You do not need nuts on these because these are the nuts here. And we're going to start on one side. So here, the head of the bolt will get in the way. You just have to slide the washer up, put that in first, and then just get that. If you can go through a whole assembly of a rack without dropping something, then working pretty awesome. So try that again. And once you got that, pull it tight. We're going to get this side up there. We can rest it. I'll try to get out of the way. Now, same thing. Get the washer to go in first. Now, you can get the bolt in there. Screw it in. You can hand tighten it first. Now again, we're going to want to make sure that these are tight. These gaps here are closed. Close it down, and then you should be able to move this around so that it should be flush right across the top. And that's going to secure it. We're going to tighten these bolts down here with your same 3/4 wrench. Again, this bolt will get in the way, the head of it, so open-ended wrench. You won't be able to use a drill or a what is it called? An impact wrench. So looking, that gap's opened up a bit, so I'm just going to loosen it back up. Make sure I close that gap and then tighten her down. Not super tight right away. Same thing, go to the other side and tighten it up. And then at that point, right now you're basically done. We're gonna have to go back and retighten all of the nuts. And then what you would have to do is, I'm not gonna film this portion, is there's a couple ways that you can go about this. One, you don't absolutely have to secure the rack down. That's kind of a decision that you can make. It is obviously going to make it much more sturdy. One of the secrets is, one of the tips, and I would do this no matter what, is try to get some rubber flooring and put it down underneath your rack. That in itself is really grippy, and that holds it really still. But once all these things all the bolts are tightened down, it does become very, very sturdy. But once if you have a cement floor, which is probably mostly going to be the case, you're going to use a Tapcon, a concrete anchor, drill through this, and then put several Tapcons or concrete anchors through this rail, and that's why it's slotted, so you'll have lots of opportunities, lots of places to actually secure this down. But again, you're going to want to measure the distance between this rail, and then move these right to where they need to go. Same distance, and then you would secure it down on both sides. If you choose not to secure it down, obviously that's more of a risk that these things can move. Once it's all fully bolted down, it doesn't tend to be a problem, but again, liability, I say absolutely bolt it down. It doesn't take long, it's very simple. Not a ton of cost associated with it, and it's much more stable that way. So bolt it down. So I just want to go over a few more things, more about safety, and make sure that you guys are assembling your racks correctly and remain nice and safe. So there's several points where there could be opportunity for the rack to move, and we just want to make sure that this never happens. So this has a double bolt, a double nut system to pull down on this rail, and this will make it very, very secure, but you have to make sure that you really tighten these bolts down nice and tight. So these ones here, we're going to really wrench down tight, and that is just creating, on this nut they have teeth on them, and that's going to secure this right down to this rail, so this part could never pull out. And there's two of them for safety. Again, make sure these are both really tight, especially these 1/2-inch bolts. You can really wrench down on them. So same thing on this other side here. 1/2 inch bolts, 2 of them. Make sure these are very secure, because again, if it ever came out from here, that would be the opportunity. But with these, it's doubled up. That should never be able to happen. But again, make sure that you go through and you secure all of these bolts down. But hopefully for now, this was super easy to set up. It's just as easy to tear down if you have to move it, put it somewhere else. Lots of options as far as how far away from the wall, low pro, medium size, which this one is that I just built, or the Mega Rack, which is the biggest version. But shouldn't be a problem. Just make sure over time you're just coming back and just checking these bolts and making sure that they're still secure and they're still tight. I would do that you know, as often as you think you need to, but once a month, you know, probably the more often the better, obviously. But then we can put your J-cups on here that comes with it, and then you guys can just start rocking out and get into your squats and bench presses and all that fun stuff. So your rack should be set up at this point.